Hello and welcome to Ivory Blush Roses. My name is Lisa and today we're stitching the next seam on the wool crazy quilted Christmas tree. Now originally I filmed this seam while I was filming the snowflake seam that I showed in the last video. And so there's a little bit of overlap, and this also catches the tail end of when my overhead camera was not working. So I beg your patience with the start of this. It gets better as it goes. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll go ahead and get started. All right, let's do one more seam on here. So let's go back to our book here and see what we can come up with. And I either want to do this one here or this one here next. And then I think we'll leave the rest of the seams for next time. So let's start at the back of the book here. I have been adding a few things here recently. I don't have a lot more room in this book. We're looking for starry, sparkly seams. I know this is a lot of time spent just looking through my book, trying to figure out what I'm going to stitch. But for me, the decision making is a huge part of the process of stitching. It's trying to decide what's going to work well to balance with what I already have, and yet provide something that's got good interest to it. We'd really lost that curve almost completely up here, so it wouldn't hurt to have a curve of some kind in here. But a nice herringbone stitch would work really well. What about that one for this seam right here? I think that one would be wonderful, and if we could take and put our little stars in the center there in place of that cluster of beads, or even up here. I like this one. Let's do this one. So that is a herringbone. And I think that'll be nice, and that'll give another bigger seam to kind of counteract what we've got going. It's going to be really similar to this one, but it will be different as well. And maybe on this one we do the herringbone in white and we do the rays in green, and that will bring it different than this. We add our little line of stars in it. I think that's going to work great. Let's do that. Let's pick a thread here. I feel like we're always using the same thread. Let's do the Boni this time. You know, usually when I stitch herringbone, we're always talking about running the sides are going to be parallel. But on this one, because we're kind of going around that curve, I'm going to all run a little bit greater on that top side. I like doing this one best from left to right. It goes better with my pattern of stitching. I want these to be fairly steep, steeper than what I have here. Again, we're going to try and make it different. I'm stitching off of my piece here, which I normally don't recommend, but I want to get my locations correct. I just have to get that establishing one in. So it's not a lot different than the one previous to it, because this is not a steep curve, but there is a change that's ever so slight that I'm watching for. I'm really wanting to make sure that my distance here, between here and here, is what's staying the same. It gives me an idea how far I need to come up. And I'm always holding it out and looking at it as well to make sure I'm not getting off track. And that curve grows a little bit, so the angle increases a little bit. It gets a little wider. That one's too wide. Do you see that? All of a sudden it's out of proportion. So I'm just going to pull that back. That's why we're checking it every time. Yeah, that's better. Do you see that? Much better. And I'm running into this other seam here, and that's okay, because we're going to let this one take precedence, because we need this diagonal here to countermand this stuff here. Because I don't know where my seams are going to come exactly on this project, I am going to finish this off, even though we're stitching right on the edge. I probably will give a little extra on the muslin, so I'll have a little bit of room here. Now, my backing fabric does have a little crease in it there, and it's just the way it is. It's going to be stuffed, and so I don't think it's going to make a difference one way or the other. There's that one. So now we need to find our green. Now I'm thinking, because we're still pretty dark down here, I like this green. I think that's going to show up really nice against that. We've got a lot of others. You know, we have this cooler green, which is just too dark. It blends in too much. I think this one is too light. So I think this is the one we want, and that helps pull some of these warmer greens through the whole piece as well. Both cameras are recording. I have been checking to make sure they're recording, and it looked like they were, and then I just get stitching, and then I don't catch when one or the other shuts off. So I apologize. I got a lot of this seam stitched without it being recorded in a way that you can see. So we've just made all these little sprays along here, and looking like we're getting bigger as we go. And that one looks like it needs maybe tightened up just a smidgen. That will help it look less big, I think. And then we're going to do one more over here. And then we're going to come back and do the little cross-hatching stitch on those herringbones. And we're going to use this same green. And then we're going to switch gears and do beads and stars. There we go. Okay, so we're just going to do a little crosshatch that goes sideways over that. We'll take a look. Do I like the green, or would I rather have it in white? Like I said, I think we're going to come in and put little stars in here. And so with that, I think the green works. It gives it just a tiny bit more interest in there. And then there were also some straight stitches up here, and I think that we're going to come back and do in white as well. So we have just the little triad ones here on the top. So we'll do that. So sometimes as I go, I just have to check and see that what I'm doing is what I really want to be doing. So just little cross hatches. Not complicated, just they add a teeny tiny bit of interest. And with the green on green, they're not going to be super noticeable. If I had done the white, you would see them very distinctly. Finish that one off, even though it's probably going to be in the seam. I think I'm going to come down here and do one as well, just for the same reason, even though it's probably going to be in the seam just in case. And we'll make our knot inside the piece. I probably just put it right where the machine will sew over, which probably isn't ideal, but it is what it is. So I've still got some of that white that I kept from last time. We'll go ahead and use that up. And now we're going to come in and make those little triads on the top. And again, this is part of what's going to make this look distinctly different from this one here. I just came up a little off center here. So we're just going to do 3 little straight stitches there. And again, I'm going to try and start from the top, come down to center, and then go up and do them side to side like that, because I think that you get a little bit more even. That was what I found when I was doing these. I also am finding that, like I did on the corduroy, that I have to be a little generous, stitch a little longer than I think I need to, because the wool eats the stitches a little bit. So that looks really high, but by the time I'm done stitching, it'll be significantly shorter. See, on these side ones I feel like I'm coming out just as tall as the one in the center, but I'm really not. Alright, I think this one is a good spot to end that thread, and then I'll just need to get another one. I'm not sure which needle I'm using right now, but I think it must be a Bohin needle because it threads so easily and it just glides right through the fabric, so I'm really happy with it. Let's see if we can finish off. We've got 3 of these left, and then we're going to stitch on some beads. I'm going to stitch this one down here because it's close enough. Some of it may show outside of the seam. I'm not sure how much of it will or not, because these are going to be tight seams on this one. In hindsight, I wish I'd given a little more allowance around the outside. So there, I'm happy with that so far. Okay, let's see. Make sure we're still recording. We are, thankfully. Okay, we're done with that. So I'm thinking I want those little stars in. I have no doubt. I'm not going to put one here, but I am going to put one here. And on these little stars, the points are not all the same and the hole is off center. Generally one side is a little more iridescent than the other, so I just have to look at each one and determine how it goes. And because they're a little bulkier bead, I do like running my stitch through it a second time. And that just helps hold it in place. And also take it off slightly to the side in a different position so it's not going to be as likely to rotate once I get it stitched down. So again, I have to check which side. I think that's the right side. I think actually you can do either one on that one. This project sat in my stash of to-be-done projects for the longest time because I just wasn't happy with what they had for seams and I couldn't come up with something. And as I mentioned earlier, this is the one where finding the star beads, the moment I saw them, knew what I wanted to do with them and that it would be the perfect jumping off spot. It just is what made this seam. That one's not a very nice one. I'll set that one aside. Gotta find that iridescent side. I love stitching with natural fibers and natural materials. I'm not much on plastic. I don't have a lot of plastic in my home if I can help it. And the plastic I do have tends to be stuff that's reasonably durable. So I really love finding these nice little mother of pearl stars. Alright, and I need to tie that one off because it's not very long. I'm not sure I can get 2 knots out of it, but we're going to try. I think we might do it. There, we've got maybe a whole 2.5 inches of thread left on that one, not much. Where did my beading thread go? We're finishing off an old spool of Nymo beading thread here. I'm using one of these. It's a long eye John James beading needle. So it's like a number 12 betweens with a long eye. Very fine, and I love them for beading. I know some people find them a little too short, but they work really well for me. That is the end of our spool, folks. I take both ends. I'm going to bring them out even. I'm going to pull them together and make my knot both ends. So that's the bottom of my thread. It's crazy quilting. We're going to stuff the inside of it. That little knot in the tail is not going to matter. But then I want to pull my needle down to the end, hopefully. Yeah, so that's going to really help kind of stop that flow that was distracting. So I'm pleased with how that's going. Now I'm thinking that we need some green sparkly beads on top here. I just feel like it needs just that little something extra there. The other thing I'm starting to think about as I'm getting close to the end of this is what fabric am I going to use on the back of it? I unfortunately don't have a big piece of green wool for it. I wish I did. So I may have to do some searching because I really would like to try and use what I have rather than go out and buy something new for it. And I am going to go ahead and put one down here even though it's really close to that seam. I already know that I'm going to be stitching this seam using a zipper foot. That's not very nice either. They're different thicknesses. I kind of like a thinner one down here. Let's see if we can use that tiny one. Get turned over. Yeah, that's better. Alright, so let's knot that off and then let's talk about green beads. I've got some green beading thread already on the needle, and I'm kind of looking at these. So I have two sizes of these beads, and I think I've used the smaller ones here, but I used the bigger ones here. And I think down here I want smaller ones. And I don't think I'm going to do one at the top of every point. I don't like these containers. I spill them, unfortunately. I'm going to put these in a tray. A few of them, close it right up, get it out of the way so that I don't make a mess. Let's see what we think. I just want that little bit of extra on it. I don't know, maybe we do need more. Let's see here. I don't know if I want 5 on each one of them. I think I actually like it better with just 3. So we're going to do 3. I don't want them to take over the focus. I want them to just be little accents. So on these beads, they're a little longer, and so we're going to just go end to end on these beads and come out the end. There's Finn at the door. I don't know if you could hear him meowing. Doesn't like being left out, but if I can let one of them in, I need to let the other one in, and I'm not doing it. Yeah, I think 3 is fine. I think we're going to leave it at 3 and hope that it doesn't look unfinished. Does it look funny without it on the inside one? I think we're okay. I think I'm going to leave it. And so now that I'm using the green beads, I'm using green thread because I don't want that spot of white showing up on the dark fabric. But the beads, they just add that little bit of extra that just makes the seam really special sometimes. On the autumn pillow project, where I knew it's going to be something that's probably going to need washed periodically and obviously cleaned of cat hair, beads are not a good idea. But on something like this, it's going to be a display, then beads are just a perfect accent. Yeah, I like the way that's looking, and I don't think we need it at every single little juncture. So if you have suggestions for the type of fabric that would be good to use on the back of this, let me know. I'm going to see if I can find a piece of wool or enough green wool that coordinates with this that maybe I could make a back out of it. I don't want to stitch the whole back. I'll guarantee you that. I would like it to be plain. So it'll be time to go rummaging through the fabric bins. I don't do that very often these days, so we'll see what we can find. I don't want just cotton calico if I can help it. Now that I've got this part done, I'm actually wondering, do we need a little sparkle at the top of the little white things? Can't get the bead on my needle. There we go. Put the one on the outside one here as we get close to the edge, but I'm not going to put it on the top one because it is going to be in that seam. So let me knot this off. Again, doing my 2 little knots. Oh, there's hardly any thread there. That's all right. We'll make use of it. Do I need a little white one there? I'm kind of thinking I do. And if so, it helps if you open the correct end. Let's see. And if we do that, do we also need them down here? I think we do. I think that actually finishes that off really nicely. Okay. Well, this one I work better right to left. Boy, that's right on that seam there, as is that one. So I'm going to start up here. Come there. We're going to come down. I think it's actually going to use less thread if I go up one side and down the other. So I knew we needed a bigger seam here, and I think this one just fit the bill nicely. I do have an upcoming video on making a stitch book. I think we're actually going to make a 2 or 3 part out of it, because I also am going to be making a cover for my new one. I thought maybe you would enjoy following along with that. Okay, this is the last bead on this thread, and I've got to find some more thread. I have plenty. I'm not too concerned about that, so I just have to get up and get it. All right, row 1. I mean, we could leave it that way. You know, by the time you add a couple more in here, it'd probably be fine, but I really think that having that bead on the bottom is just going to be what finishes that off. So let's start with this one here. Wow, look how far off at the side I came at that one. Goodness sakes, Lisa. It's because I tried scoop stitching it, and beads just are better if you're stab stitching, especially on these thicker fabrics. Going to scoop stitch again. Gosh, I gotta really stop and make myself think on that. I'm going to go ahead and put one there, even though I think we're awfully close to the edge. I just feel like it needs that look as though the pattern finishes. All right, one of those, there we go. I tried to never put a threaded needle in the pincushion without knotting the thread, because I hate taking that first stitch and discovering that it didn't get stitched. I am just so happy with how it's turning out. It makes my heart glad. I just am really pleased with how this is coming along. I can't wait to see this finished, and we're getting so close. That's the exciting part. It gets me driven to get it done. Thank you so much for being here with me today as I worked on this crazy quilted Christmas tree. I'm so pleased with how it's going. This is probably the project that's excited me more than any to work on all year long. I'm so happy to be sharing it with you. So thank you so much for watching. We'll stitch the next 3 seams in the next video, and then we will have a video of putting it together. Have a beautiful day, happy stitching, and I'll see you in the next video.